Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 1 Minute Writing Tip podcast. I'm so excited for today's author guest, who is Megan Whitmer. She is a mom of 5, a working respiratory therapist, and a newly published author. She just published her book, Mom Life versus the Everyday Apocalypse, Tales of Survival from Marriage to Motherhood. She is living her best apocalypse ever, moving into their RV full-time last spring with her husband and 5 kids. She loves finding the fun and positive in the difficult and putting a smile on other women's faces. Megan, that sounds so exciting and fun. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so go ahead and share a little bit more about your journey to publishing amidst the 5 kids and the move and working full time and what that looked like for you.
So I always wanted to publish a book, ever since I was a kid. My dad actually told me, he's like, I thought you would have done more with your writing much earlier, but I had 5 kids and a career and I really enjoy my career. And I think one thing I'd like to say is that, you don't just have to be an author. It's okay to have multiple parts of your life. And I think that those other parts give you things to talk about in your writing, things to write about. But so I wanted to write, and I had been writing little snippets and bits throughout my entire marriage. We just hit 20 years. And I really couldn't fit in how to learn how to write a book, and so I just kept writing and perfecting how I wrote and getting better at it. And last winter, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start. I'm just going to do it. All my kids were finally in school. My youngest was 6 in kindergarten. And I'm like, this is my year. So the days I had off where I wasn't at work, I just took out a few hours every day, a little bit, and just kept writing. I finished it in March. And then I had to self-publish. And that was a learning curve. I knew the writing. I mean, sometimes that seems like the hardest part, but I had been doing that for 20 years. And so I was able to work through that. But then self-publishing was a whole nother creature. And right about when I started to self-publish is when we moved into our RV full-time so we could sell our house. And with the market going crazy, our house sale just kept falling through like multiple times. So here we are still in our RV come fall. So the whole time I was in an RV with our 5 kids, figuring out the self-publishing world. And I just took it step by step. I just did a little bit every day. And I just had to tell myself, it's okay. It's not like there's a crowd of people clamoring for you to be done. And that's one reason I liked going the self-publishing route, was that I didn't have a deadline. I just could do it at my own pace, which was really important with my crazy life. And so I just kept going a little bit at a little bit. And finally on August 11th, I published my book. And then the work didn't stop. Then you have to advertise it. And I had to take a course on learning how to advertise it. And then I wanted to sign up for book awards. So that's what I've been doing this week, is figuring out which book awards I wanted to apply to and sending my book off. And it's been quite the learning curve, uphill mountain, like going up Everest, but I feel smarter. Like I feel like I've really learned and grown in different ways that I had never had the chance before. And I've loved it.
Yeah, you touched on so many, I love what you shared, because you nailed it on so many points that, it's okay to have other aspects, and really it does bring more meat to your story and to your characters. And, it allows you to express that to your reader, and then your reader to connect. And so it's definitely dynamically great. And then it is a journey. It's not just a one and done, there is so much to it, but I think that that's one of the beautiful things about becoming an author, is that it is a growing process, but you as a person also grow through that process. And there's so many takeaways and lessons to learn. And it sounds like for you, that has definitely been the case in the best possible way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love learning. I love learning new things. I have way too many hobbies, but sometimes you just have to get into one of them and just perfect it a little bit more. And it just turns out to be something always worthwhile. Anytime you really get into something, even if, you know, even if my dream was to be a full-time author and never work again, but for the rest of my life, I'm still a respiratory therapist and I never make my millions. It's okay. I love the journey and I love becoming more to me. There's more to me than there used to be. So
yeah, definitely. And I feel like that's part of just kind of life's journey too, is just you're always growing and learning and incorporating those lessons in each new venture that you pursue as you get older. And yeah, I think that writing is one of those ways that really reflects that, because you can look back on previous writing and see where you were at that point in time in your life. And then you write something else and it's like, oh, I'm in this totally different place now. And it's just a beautiful aspect of that as well.
Yeah, when I was a young mother, when I just had 2 kids at home, I was trying to write, like, this book that I wrote was a nonfiction humorous book, but I was trying to write like a narrative storybook. And so I was writing this book about this teddy bear that was an alien. And I just loved my story. And every time we were at the playground, I had my little notebook and I'd write a new section and my kids would be like, "What did you write, Mom?" And I'd read them what I wrote. And now looking back at that story, you know, it's kind of boring to me. Plot. I'm like, oh, I'm not at that point in my life where that is a story I want to write. So I didn't finish it. And that's okay. I learned how to write a little better just by attempting it. And it's okay if you have projects you didn't finish and moved on. I think society is always like, oh, you gave up. You gave up on that story. How dare you, you know? But it shouldn't be like that. It was a moment of my life where I could write at the playground. And I took it and I used it and I grew from it. And now that I want to write are different and fuller and more for me and more for where I'm at in my life. It's kind of fun that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you nailed it. I think that ultimately it's not about the stuff that you've abandoned. It's more about the lessons that you've learned and how you take that into the next step. And that's huge. So as long as you continue incorporating that, you know, that's what really matters. So as we're talking about, you know, you have 5 kids and you're riding at the park and you're riding in the RV and just all these different life things happening. What would you say is your top advice for someone who's also very busy and has things going on and feels like they don't have time to write?
Yeah, that is a really common problem, I think, with all my mom friends. So many of them are like, oh, I would love to write. I was great at English, or even I got a degree in English and I'm doing nothing with it, you know? I would say the way that I grew in my writing to the point where I felt like I could write a book was to write what was going on to me. So I heard in a previous podcast you did, someone talked about journal writing and how important that could be. So about when I was having kids, I think Facebook came out in 2007, or at least that about that time is when it started to get bigger. And that's when I joined. And to me, Facebook was my little writing center. I had my friends and family on there, and I grew up in Canada, so I was far away from. I moved down to the States, where I met my husband and fell in love and stayed. And so Facebook was a way to connect and to keep in contact. And so I would write little snippets of what my kids were doing or what I was doing. And at first they were short and just me putting words on a page or on a computer screen. And then something I would recommend is for people to start doing that. Write down things that happen to your kids. Write down their little funny things they say, you know, and you hear about that all the time. Oh, people put in their memory books. But I would say use it to grow yourself as a writer. You're going to do it anyways, or you should, to maintain those memories of your kids. Use it to grow as a writer. And so you're getting, like, you know, was it 2 birds with 1 stone, I guess? It's a saying. So, you know, just write little snippets and then take those little snippets and start to write a little longer. And then look at your, you know, if it was a quarter page to start with, take that same story and add more detail to it and make it a half a page. And then look at that half a page and think, what in that story, so you don't have to create new content, it's already there. What in that story could relate to other parts of my life? Like, for example, your kid threw up all night. You're just like, oh, that was horrible. How did that change my kid? How he went from this sweet little boy to this raging monster. How does that affect, like, how does that show up in my life when I'm sick? How do I act? And, you know, and you can kind of write more about combining your experience and your kids' experience, and then write about now you have to do this yucky laundry, this pile of laundry with throw up on it that every mother dreads. What do I do with it? And it's scary. And you're like, I feel like a 9-year-old that doesn't want to do the laundry really bad. Like, I really don't want to do it. But you kind of overcome that fear. You're like, I just got to do it. And so you just take the plunge and then look at your life. What in my life besides dirty laundry? What am I scared to do? How does that, you can just take these things in your life, these real life things, and then find ways to connect them to deeper themes. And like, I tend to make them humorous, but other people can go into these and make them really spiritual or really emotional, or find those connections that moms need and write to your people.
Yeah.
You're not writing to the older professor who's 80 years old. You're writing to people that are like you, and it's good.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love that. And I love what you shared about making it you, because I think there's sometimes when, especially on the page, it's easy to kind of get into that mentality of, how you were taught to write versus just your natural voice. And it's important to just kind of be yourself on the page, because that's the one place that you just can be totally yourself and it doesn't matter, and,
yes.
And so I love that you make it humorous because it's your personality. And so it's going to speak to the readers that love and appreciate that, and for the people that are more serious, or they write, in these emotional ways or different ways, it's expressing your voice on the page. And that's going to resonate with the readers that are going to be your raging fans, and so that's so important for sure. So you had some specific points that you wanted to really share with our listeners. So I want to ask you, why is developing patience the number one way to really happiness and an enjoyment of your dream while you're still pursuing it?
Yeah. So with patience, I found when I was a younger mother, patience was in short supply. I couldn't see who my kids were going to be. I couldn't see how our life was going to go. And frankly, if I'd known how my life was going to go, I would have broke down crying. It was going to be harder than I thought it was. And that's okay. Not that you all need to start crying about your future lives, but when you are in a situation that's difficult, I like to think, first of all, it could be way worse. And I need to be patient because this is teaching me something. And, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. So I strongly believe that everything is in our lives for a purpose. So that gives me peace. I know other people of other religious beliefs have similar beliefs that karma or, things are there to get us through life, to teach us what we need to be. And I believe they're there to make us better people. So if we can take a situation that would typically cause me to be impatient, and if I can sit through it and be like, it's okay, the pain will dissipate, or it's okay, we're poor right now. At some point, we're going to have some more money if we just keep trying. Or it's okay, my 14-year-old is being really jerky and treating us all bad. It's okay, because at some point they're going to be a 28-year-old father who will come back and be like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. And I have to tell myself these little stories about what could be, about how it might end up. And doing that gives me the patience to just calmly go through a situation. And I'm not perfect at it. I still have my moments where I blow up, or where I react in a less than perfect way with my children, or just different situations, bills that come unexpectedly, or, people on the phone that I'm like, oh my goodness, we are not on the same page. And this is very frustrating, but you just have to be, it's okay. This is here for me to grow. And how is this going to help me grow? How is being patient with the person from India that I can barely understand? How is that going to make me a better person? I don't know. It's different for each of us, but maybe they have a family and maybe they're having a rough day. And, so my book is Mom Life versus the Everyday Apocalypse. And I talk about how I have this apocalypse school with my family about everything can be worse. So be prepared and be patient. And think about how grateful you are for what you're in. So when I think about, the person in India that I don't know, and I will never get to know, I think, maybe, I don't know, maybe he just had his foot amputated and he's super depressed. Like, I take the worst thing that could possibly happen and I apply it to the annoying situation, and it gets me through. And whether it's just the humor of it or it's the absurdity of it, that's how I deal with the stress and how I develop the patience, by pretending these people, I give them their problems and I pretend what their problems are. And it makes me more empathetic and sympathetic to them. And that gets me to a better spot.
Yeah. No, and you shared some great stuff. I think it's also a way to show love, and ultimately, that's also a way that you can show the love of Christ. It's through patience, and so it allows you to show others what that can look like. And because not everyone is able to develop that patience to that level, and so you can demonstrate, like for your kids or for people that interact with you, and they can walk away from that situation like, wow, she really handled that different. What's different? And that can be such a powerful thing. And I think, to your point, it can develop your skills as a writer, because it allows you to kind of play with your imagination and just explore those possibilities. And that really helps too, whenever you're writing and you're kind of letting your mind just explore different things and go with it. So that can be such a valuable tool. I love that you shared that.
Yeah, it's a fun way to live my life. My husband used to laugh at me, and now he's like, maybe that had some actual application to all of us, to the person that cut you off in traffic. Maybe their wife is having triplets in the back seat and you should be a little more patient as they're rushing to the hospital. That's right. My favorite one. I look at the guys and I'm like, his wife's in the back seat. I can't see her, but she's having triplets.
Oh my goodness. No, it's funny because, and then circling back around kids, because, we're both moms. I feel like your analogy with the everyday apocalypse in the title is perfect, because whether they're 3 years old and they're a toddler and their crayon broke, or they're a teenager and they just, had something bad happen at school or with their peers or whatever, it's like the whole world is all of a sudden ending for them, and as the adult, as the mom, you have to step in and be like, okay, I understand and I'm there for you and I'm going to comfort you, but the world is not ending. Okay. Like, we're going to move on from this and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's definitely a perfect analogy for the different phases of motherhood and, life and all of those fun adventures that we inevitably end up having, on an everyday basis sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So why is living with it could always be worse? Why is that your personal favorite way to deal with the hard things? I know you kind of just illustrated that, and you're sharing about, developing patience and just putting those stories into the situation that's happening. But just, expound on specifically, it could always be worse versus the flip side of that I think a lot of people tend to try and imagine how things could be better. So why is that your way of approaching it?
So it could never be worse. One example is I was kind of hooked on saying the word tapeworm for a while. Like, it just came up in my conversations with people randomly, and people were like, why are you talking about tapeworms? I'm like, because that would be really bad. I would not want a tapeworm. And it's a possibility too, right? Like, it's something that maybe could happen. But thinking of the worst thing makes me grateful. It makes me grateful for what I'm not going through. And I can look back and think, some of the time I went through the worst case scenario, when someone dies, that's kind of a worst case scenario because they're taken from your life. They're taken from this earth. And yet, even the worst case scenario can have a happy ending. If you believe in a heaven, then someone going and dying, they're going to somewhere that's good. They're going to somewhere beautiful, that's peaceful. And so even the worst case scenario can have a happy ending. Getting a tapeworm, hey, you'll lose weight. Something I struggle with on a daily basis. So even the worst things can bring me to a point where I am grateful. for what I have, and grateful for the trials that might come at me, grateful for the things that might come my way. And so sometimes looking at the worst situation can bring a laugh, and laughter is the best medicine, right? It brings me a way to smile, even through tears, I guess. We had a difficult thing happen this summer, and I started crying because I was like, this is really hard, and I'm physically tired today. I'm emotionally spent. I'm having a hard time dealing with it. And then we just said, well, it could be worse. And we went through the things that it could have been. I mean, we could have had a child die. That's not funny, but it was true. And here we had our 5 children still. It could have been worse. We could have both of us gotten cancer and been at the hospital at the same time. I mean, like I go quite extreme with my ideas, but it's true. It could be worse. And even if those things had happened, there's a way through them. There's a way through them to happiness on the other side. So there's always something that, even in the imagining of what could be the worst thing, that also gives me hope. It could be worse, and we would get through that too, And so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also that, specifically for just taking the lessons out of it and growing, kind of going back to what we mentioned earlier with all of that. And then also just as you're exploring and you're coming up with those stories and really allowing it to give you that gratitude and that insight and that appreciation and contentment with what you have been given is such a, like you said, it's such a powerful way to look at it and really just shift the perspective. And it really helps you to focus externally as well, and not just on how you're feeling about something, which can be subjective. And I think that also really ties into some struggles that people have, even around like just pursuing their dream of becoming an author. And I think there's a lot of people that want to do that, but they've been held back by blocks or challenges or fears or doubts and criticism. And they feel really discouraged and like, man, I haven't done it, or what if I'm not good enough? And like, just all the negative aspects of that. And I think, even for a writer that has put themselves out there, maybe it didn't go very well or whatever, it's important to have that mentality of, well, what's the worst that could happen? And really just kind of putting it in that perspective of, okay, even in the worst case possible scenario that I could think of, it could be worse. And it's not enough for me to never pursue that dream if it really is valuable, and just to continue to take those steps forward and continue to pursue those goals and just see what life continues to bring. And then of course, with each chapter, you learn from it and then you apply it to the next chapter and you keep going from there. So that's.
One example I have is with putting yourself out there and going is I like to write music as well. And so I played the piano, I play it great, but I didn't know how to write music for a long time. And I always wanted, like, I feel like us mothers have, or women in general, have this creative need. Kind of the ultimate form of that is having children. You grow, you create these little ones, and then you get to raise them and try and turn them into great adults. And it's like this crowning achievement, but not everyone can have kids, but I think that every woman has that creative desire to create things. And so I had that with music, and probably 15 years ago, I took a few little courses that I did a little bit at a little time, and I learned how to write music a little bit. So I wrote a kid's song, and it was lame. Like it wasn't great. But my kids liked it, and they're like, Mommy wrote this song. So we would sing it occasionally. And then I was like, I did it. I had a tune in my head, I put it into the piano, I put it on paper. And so then I wrote another song, and then I wrote another one. And every time I wrote, they got a little better. And then I would use my writing and I would write a story, and every chapter had a song that went with it. So I could kind of combine my creativity. And the first time I did that, where it was a story, and I went to sing it to my kids. I'd tell them a little bit of the story and I'd sing the song to them. I realized I'd written it so that you couldn't actually sing along. Like you were going from this high note to this low note. And I'm like, ooh, that was a really bad job, Megan. You did really bad at that. But my kids loved it. It was a story about them and it was this fun thing. So I'm like, I'm going to try again. So I wrote another storybook with music and I just kept going. And then I got good enough where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try and submit some of my songs to some contests. And so I've been doing that. I've been submitting it to some it's more religious music, the stuff that's a little more professional. And I haven't won a single thing from it, like nothing. But I submit every year and I'm like, it's okay. They don't like it, but having that goal of I'm going to submit my music makes me work hard at it. And it makes me keep trying. Yeah. And so I think like right now I'm submitting my very first book to these awards and I will probably, I don't know, maybe I'll win something, but if I don't, I'm going to look at it the same way as my music, that it's okay. But knowing that I'm going to write another book and submit that makes me or helps me to give it my best and to have a little hope. Anytime you have a little hope, it kind of helps you to keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to hold on to that because then no matter what is happening in life, as long as you keep that glimmer of hope, it really helps you to continue taking those steps forward. And I love that. So you mentioned writing another book. So are you specifically working on one right now? Or is there an upcoming book that you would like to share about?
I have 2 books and I haven't decided which one I'm going to work on. One is going to be another one like my humor mom one. And it doesn't have a title yet, but I've got what I do is I go back through my life, all my Facebook little snippets, and I take those. And I mean, I would encourage anyone to do that. Go back through your journal, go back through the stories you sent to your mom about what Johnny did yesterday. And I'm going to use those as the basis for another book. Or I'm going to write one about losing weight and call it Battling the Chubbies. I'm not sure. They're both going to be fun. They're both going to be positive and encouraging and realistic to our mom lives, So I am going to be deciding that in the next few weeks and then starting on another one.
Awesome. So, I love that. They sound so fun and creative. And I love that you bring that element of fun into your writing. It's so cool. So how can listeners learn more about you and your book and ultimately connect with you?
Yeah. So I have a website, meganwhitmerbooks.com. And I have started to get on TikTok. I have like 4 videos on there. They're probably all super lame, but I think they're hilarious. And so do my kids. We watch them all the time. So same with that, Megan Whitmer Books on TikTok. And yeah, if you go there, you can use my contact form and contact me. My email is mwhitmer, MWHITMER @meganwhitmerbooks.com. And I'd love to hear from people. I have a newsletter you can sign up for. You can get, I've got a freebie e-course that you can take. It's how to plan 30 meals in 30 minutes. So, and then you get the bonus section of how to, I can't remember the title of it, but it's basically 30 ideas for picky eaters, how to help them overcome that. So you can sign up for that and hear from me probably once a month. I consider doing it every week, but with 5 kids and a job and writing a book, once a month is good. Sometimes you just have to say, what can I actually physically do? And that's it, once a month.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Being realistic with yourself is a key point for sure. And as long as you're consistent, that's what really matters too, even if it's drawn out. So that's great. I will have to take you up on the meal plans because that is one thing I love to do too. So for all my listeners, if you want to learn more about Megan and of course check out her book and her website and her tips for meals and for kids, I will include her details in the description for you guys. Megan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a really fun time.
Awesome. So for all my listeners, thank you also for tuning in. I will expect to see you on the next one. And please don't forget to leave a review wherever you're listening from.